So, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are based in the world. Welcome to the second episodes of Reality Shift, a show for entrepreneurs, investors, innovators who want to succeed in the XR space. My name is Gabriele Romagnoli, head of community and marketing at Shapes XR, a bit of a tech ambassador, and I'm here with Anandas. Anandas, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, Anand. I work on VR and mixed reality apps at Meta.
So, and we are today live. So, I think we encourage everybody who actually has questions to drop them here in the chat. So, and maybe why don't we say a couple of words about reality shift while people start joining in? Maybe reality shift. What is reality shift, Anand? Do you want to take it from there, and then maybe I fill up anything that is missing?
Yeah, sounds good. Both Gabriel and I have been students of virtual reality and mixed reality for a while now, and we decided, hey, why not get together, take a very objective view over time, and see what are some of the true technological shifts and the ecosystem shifts happening in this space, and how that might open up opportunities for founders and smart investors to enter what I think is going to be really the next computer. And so here we are talking about stuff, and it's our second episode. So we'll see how this goes.
Indeed, and I don't think I have much to add because we really kind of like down to earth. Let's dissect the BS. Let's try to go beyond that and let's try to analyze. And that is why they say the idea for the second episode was, hey, what is that people might have missed from MetaConnect? Right. So today, now that is the dust is somehow settling, because I think people are still opening their boxes today, getting their headsets, maybe if they didn't manage yesterday. So people are getting their Quest 3 at home. But what does that mean for the long run? What does it mean if you're here for the long game? So we are here indeed. And today, what we want to indeed dissect is how that impact the future, let's say, right? So what are the from a hardware perspective, from a technological perspective, from a vision, so some of the messages, the things that might not have been so, let's say, open, right? Of course, Quest 3, it's about mixed reality, but what more? By the way, we got people start here. Hi, Fakar, nice to have you. And by the way, anybody here, please say hi. Actually curious if where are you from while we go through. We'll be curious to see where you guys are, so that we can also then answer your questions. But so, Anand, I mean, you are somehow into it. I mean, not somehow. You
So,
are very much. Yeah, exactly, right. So I already withdraw what I said. So you are into it. What was your impression overall before we start digging? Let's say.
um, so this year I was on the outside a little bit, specifically at Connect. I had to take some medical leave, so I was not in office
Mhm.
during the time. Um, I mean, and I messaged. By the way, this show is us as individuals, and we're not representing our employers. So we should be very clear about the fact that anything we talk about here is like our personal
We
opinions
have
and
our
does
own
not reflect.
personal opinion. Exactly, very
Yes,
much.
not representing any of our organizations. From the outside, I thought it was pretty impressive the amount of announcements. So I watched it on live stream, like the rest of the world, because I was not in office, and the amount of announcements just like boggled my mind. And at some point, I was like, and having worked on this for a while now, I was like, but that thing, we should talk more about it. But this thing, we should talk more about it. So I thought it was really interesting how the themes were woven through between. I think Mark's slide, the opening slide framed it. I think he said mixed reality, AI, and he had, I think the third pillar was, I forget what the third pillar was, but he had like
Yeah,
three AR, right? Like the glasses. So like
the
I think
classes,
that
the
was
Ray-Ban.
some broad swath of things. I don't know, how did you feel? Like you were on the outside. What did you think?
I was watching live actually, so I was actually live streaming this also on LinkedIn. So that's another reason maybe for people to go, yeah, stick around and follow me if you like this kind of content. Um, and the first impression was no major surprises. So in a sense, I think a lot basically had been already announced. At least for excites me the most. That is the mixed reality part, the hardware part. So that is the no surprises. Uh, the AI thing, the section about AI was also like very interesting, and I was like, how is this gonna pan out, right? So this is like the first step in releasing something like this, how that's going to evolve in time, right? Because it's also like pushing something fast out to people to use it. So that is indeed I'm not sure how it's going to evolve. So overall, I think it was indeed, as you mentioned, like very, very, very packed with news and overall positive. Just like that kind of like catchy moment, like super surprised. Oh my God, this no, but I wouldn't have expected that. That was my personal feeling. And by the way, we've got more people joining from Mangalore. Hi, Deepika. And we have also from Mumbai, so we have good representation, Indian representation so far. So hello, everybody. Yeah, so, but indeed, you mentioned about these three pillars, right? And there is a clear connection between those, right? I don't see them as distinct entity, right? It was clear that those are interconnected. I mean, maybe like, could you see like a big vision or something that maybe people might have missed?
I don't know, like the keynote was awesome, obviously, but I also thought that the sessions that followed it had a lot of insight that was tucked away into it because there's so much interesting content in there.
Yes.
I want to quickly react to the comment you made that like, hey, there were no surprises. Like, I think it's because people knew Quest 3 was coming because it was talked about in the summer. People had seen, I think like Mark had roughly shown what it would look like.
Very much, yeah.
So it wasn't this thing where people didn't know what it was. I think there were a lot of interesting signals in the specifics of each of the section. But to your question specifically on what is a broader vision, I think Abrash's interview with Boz, if people haven't watched it, because mostly these really people focus on the keynote and then roll off, right? And this is why we wanted to do this episode, because like as we saw the developer state of the union, the technical sessions, Abrash's interview, you have to see the whole thing and then you'll see the dots. And then you want to pick them out and you want to connect them if you're a founder or investor to truly like judge and assess opportunity, right? So Abrash's interview, go.
No, just because we got a little fragment of it, so maybe I can play it, and then you can go ahead and maybe make some of your comments. What do you think?
Okay, we're doing this live. It's like the equivalent of a live demo. Okay, let's roll with it.
Anybody listening to this, I guarantee you have a supercomputer in your pocket or in your purse, right? Every single one of us does. We don't even have to ask. That's how much they change the world. But it's only a partial step towards the real vision, and the real vision is a world in which we can mix real and virtual in any way we want to serve our needs, to meet our goals. And that is the thing that we're creating, where we can drive our perceptions and allow us to act in the way we do in the real world.
Keep talking about the input modalities, this touching the keyboard and the pointing device, and those modalities just don't work in augmented and virtual reality. And so that's another area that is such a key piece that's so different from the previous generation of technology.
Absolutely. In fact, that may end up being the most fundamental aspect of all, which is when you're walking around the world, you're not going to be popping up menus and pointing at them, right? You're not going to be tapping on surfaces all the time. What you want is you want the right thing to happen when you want it to happen. And that really comes down to a combination of being able to sense the world around you, of understanding your context, of having AI that can make sense of that to help you, and then of having this ultra low friction input that lets you act easily, intuitively, anytime, any place. All those pieces need to come together. So that's one of the big things that we have been working on developing. And we've talked many times publicly about EMG, electromyography, which I think is the future of how we will interact with the virtual world. It's something that lets us monitor the nerve impulses and small muscle movements in our wrists so that we can easily privately and with high bandwidth interact with the digital.
Cool.
So there was this little fragment. Of course, the interview was much longer, right? You were referring to a different section, but Anand, go ahead, because that was a little bit that also inspired me. But go ahead.
First off, good job trying to do a live demo, intercepting and putting interview content directly in this conversation. Before the segment, Abrash actually talks about the foundation of computing, right? And Boz briefly talks about it in the clip that you showed. It's really three things: a bitmap screen, a pointer and click device, and a keyboard, right? And the innovation started, and as they talk about in Xerox PARC. And that has been how computers have evolved over the last 30, 40, 50 years. All those assumptions, all the way from hardware through the experiences, are changing literally at every layer of the stack. This is a big simplification, but the original question, what is the vision? I think the bitmapped screen becomes your world. It's no longer your screen. It's literally the world around you. The pointing device. So what happens? The screen is going away, slowly blending out of like this constraint between the human and the computer. Second, your body becomes the mouse, right? It's like an oversimplification, but that is generally the idea, right? And you saw one other thing you see in the Connect sessions is the use of hands. And where is the mouse gone, right? And the keyboard, we still haven't fully cracked keyboard across the industry, but the ability to input better. I think the long-term vision is, if you take MR, mixed reality, which is about the world, AI, which is about inferring what you want to do to interact with that world, and the form factor, whether it's glasses or something like Quest 3 that's slimmer, you are changing all of those three things over the next, 10, 20 years. To me, like, that is the real long-term vision, where the pointing device, the bitmap screen, and the form factor change from everything we've known, and mixed reality, AI, and new device form factors will get us there. That is the real long-term vision.
Yeah, and there was one thing also that I think that sometimes we are very focused on kind of like technologies, like indeed similar form factor or how we interact with our hands. I think that from a broader perspective, it's more like how we will consume and or generate this next generation of content, right? So because it is like, well, we will not go there and be around and taps. It is disconnected from a hardware we will strap to our face, but it's like a whole experience, right? So if, for example, I was someone that would need to step into this, right, and I have a long-term vision, I wouldn't think what app can I develop, but it would be more like, okay, I'm here, and in 5-6 years from now, the way we will interact with our digital content is going to be different. What is my space? And it doesn't have to be necessarily like 3D content floating around. That interaction with digital content could revolve around hardware, could revolve around infrastructure, back end. So let's not focus on apps, hardware, let's look at user interacting with digital content, consuming it, creating it, and doing it sometimes together. What is the space? What is that future? And then we can think, of course, about the Ray-Ban glasses being the first, right, that come to market with AI in, and that is great, and that is what is gonna get us in, and hardware developer, software developer to understand and start really creating for it. But I think we need to, if you are here for the long term, you should look beyond, right? And like, okay, let's disconnect from hardware and let's think what the future could look like in a way that is not even infer from what are the limitations right now. And these also, you as potentially as an investor, as a founder, as a creator, could look ahead and think, oh, this is different. It makes your brain shifts, I think.
Yeah, you're
So, and by the
a
way,
lot of.
just Jason is mentioning your energy has him fired up for this future. So,
Hey, Jason, thank you. Um, I want to actually like send the vibes back to Jason. Like, you touched on something super interesting, Gabriel. Like, uh, if you're here for the long term, you have to think about all of this very differently. The biggest source of energy and innovation and all of this, and Abrash again talks about this, where he talks about the developer community and the founders working in the space. They are the ones pushing this thing inch by inch forward, right? And he talks about like, I think he called it like the myth of technological inevitability, where he's like, oh, it'll automatically happen. The future will automatically happen. It actually does not. It requires like consistent application of force. And Jason, if you're listening to this, it's like your energy that's feeding like the ecosystem as much as the ecosystem's energy feeding you. So the early innovation that I'm seeing is all from developers. Like, what is the mechanic? Nobody knows. Why is it fun? Nobody knows. And like some of these things, you have to build it to see it. And I think it's the early work by the developer ecosystem that's actually pushing us forward. As with every wave of computing. Do you remember
and I
that?
would like Anand. Yeah. Sorry, Anand. I just wanted to
No, go.
one thing because so what struck me was also the use of those strong words like use of force. Like, and then it's like you I don't know, sometimes you don't think in this way, as we are not pushing our technology, we are developing with our users and with the market, but instead this is like an aggressive, it's a very aggressive statement. It requires the continuous exertion of force. And that was really like a point that while they were discussing, it was like, yeah, that's a pretty big statement. And but yeah, actually, since you like the first intermezzo with video, I do have another one.
Wait,
regarding
what is intermezzo? Did you just use like an Italian word?
Yes, intermezzo, it's like an in between.
Okay, now I picked up the word intermezzo. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So was because you were mentioning it about the developer pushing this, and I think developers have got great success. So we have a bit of a snippet of that.
I feel like we sort of say this every year, but like the quest just keeps getting bigger and bigger. 1 in 12 titles on our platform has made $10 million or more in gross revenue. And we've shipped over 50 titles already. This year, we have a whole lot more coming in the holiday season. And I'm not just talking about success with video games, right? Like fitness and wellness developers are finding huge success because it turns out that millions of people are using VR today to help improve their well-being. Growth on App Lab has also been incredible. Some of our largest and most accomplished studios are soft launching in App Lab to get feedback about their applications or make modifications before a full store launch. Roblox, for example, soft launched in App Lab, as has Glassbreakers from Polyarc and X8 from Thirdverse, just to name a few recent examples. All of this is about to get a lot bigger with the launch of MetaQuest 3.
So, is it, Anand? Do you think it's gonna get a whole lot bigger? What do you think?
Well, if I could predict the future, then I would be betting on stocks. No one can predict the future, but I can tell you this for a fact that like this is one of the gems that was hidden in a developer session.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be very clear. Money matters. Money matters because it fuels the ability for developers to stay in the game. And more the ecosystem is able to produce for developers, the more developers will be able to innovate, and more of the innovation will truly bring about. That is literally the exertion of extraordinary force, right? And it's mind-blowing to think that like this device, which historically has found, or this category has found product market fit with gaming and gamers, has produced like $2 billion. $2 billion for the ecosystem. And so if you sit on the outside and you're like, should I spend my life energy to go build something for this device? The question that needs to be answered is like, how the hell will I make money as a developer? And how will I fund my development, right? And the fact that with just one part of, which is one vertical, which is like gaming, over the last 10 years, Quest has brought this ecosystem along to a point where we can actually look at it and say there's actual money flowing in the ecosystem, and the rate of flow is also good for a whole host of developers, big and small, coming in. To me, that was like really really interesting as a data point to keep in mind, because first you have to build something that people need or want. Then you have to make sure that people need or want it enough that they'll pay for it, and then make sure that whatever they're paying for it is sufficient enough for you to build the future that you want to build as a founder. And I think the
It
conditions of,
scales.
at scale, and that those three things are becoming true for virtual reality up until Quest 3. Quest Pro had mixed reality in it, right? But it's a pro device, it's not a mass market device. And back to your original question, is it true, whole lot bigger? The answer is, I think, at the Quest 3 brings all that mixed reality that never existed before except in Pro. And if you wore Quest 2, it was black and white, into a mass market line. For the first time, I think millions of people will be able to experience it. And so when Chris talks about like it's about to get a whole lot bigger, it's like the first era of whatever happened was like virtual reality. Now we're seeing in the ecosystem a new grammar of mixed reality. So it's almost like mainframe. I mean, it's not quite the same analogy as mainframe computers.
Expansion, I would say, but a reset at the same time, because that is the thing, right? So I think that people kind of knew what was working in virtual reality and what were the capabilities, what they could do, what they could not do, what the user get, what the user don't get. And now we are in a situation where instead it's like, okay, now we need to figure this out again. What are the things that work? What are the things that do not work? And of course, that opens up opportunities. That opens up also the market, because people that maybe they were afraid of being inside this claustrophobic headset isolated from the outside world, now they have the chance to interact. Right? There isn't that fear anymore, and the quality of the pass through, it's good enough, even better than the Quest Pro, allowing really to feel like, oh, okay, I get it. This is not ugly. It's not grainy. I see it works. Of course, it has improvements as always, but it does work. So the point is, what is gonna? I mean, indeed, nobody can predict the future. I think it's easy to say, but it is like Wild West again, and that's the exciting part. And that's really the exciting part, because there are so many opportunity from people. So Anand, wait a second. I just want to acknowledge a couple of comments here. So, by the way, someone from Finland working on AI application for remote presence. Hi, nice to see you around. Follow us and maybe reach out anonymous LinkedIn user if you want to have a chat. And then there were also some Armen was saying that, can small companies make money in the Meta store? Oh, that is a big question. Anand, how do you feel about that? And then we can go back to our track, but I think it's a very valid point since what we have been talking.
Yeah, there are two parts to the question that Arman asked, right? Can we make money and in the store, right? Mm-hmm. I want to break those two things apart. One of the hidden gems that quickly went through in some of the developer sessions is the fact that App Lab is turning out to be this place where founders and developers can find community that matters to their product, tune their monetization model, and polish the product and get it to a state where it's actually ready for the store. Is just like becoming a pattern. This is the original hypothesis for App Lab, and I think they talked about like Roblox launching there, building the world, getting community, and now getting the store. So it's really important. Like when we talk about like how to make money in the store, I think the underlying question is like, what are you building? How do you find the audience? How do you make the product awesome enough that like it can open up to the mass thing? Like there are successes, right? Gorilla Tag is a great example. Small developer.
And I think to Armin's point, yes, small can work. I mean, there are teams starting with one, right? Like two. I mean, this is really the thing. Now, the point is that, and also, Anand, there is also another word that is the side quest word. That is also another place where sometimes things start. So there is some side quest, app lab going kind of like sometimes either or both at the same time, trying to find it. So I think to answer the small, yes, it is possible. But it is also to some extent, I think, a competitive field, right? So that is always something that we need to consider. It's
I mean, all ecosystems, right? Like you get this long tail effect. And if you look at iOS or Android and all mobile ecosystems, it's the same thing. Like there's a really large swath, and then some of them are incredibly successful. And I think what we really want to do with when building ecosystems is to make sure that the area under the curve is broad for also middle and small developers, and it's not just concentrated with the large developers, because then you don't get this like Cambrian explosion where people are able to come in as a one-person dev shop, like you talked about, make money enough and build on top, and then you get this effect where you spread the wealth, so to speak, across the entire ecosystem. So one-man shops, two-man shops are making money, Arman. The number one job, though, is for all of us is to increase the install base, right? That's the number one job. This is why I think Mark talks about like the first
affordability,
mainstream mixed reality headset, and those words are chosen precisely with that vision in mind. If you can get billions of users into the headset, we all know growth solves everything, and it'll just lift the entire ecosystem up, right? And so the first job to be done is make it mass market, right?
Yeah. So Anand, there was also a lot of talk about indeed mixed reality, of course. So, so what do you think could be the let's say? Do you see any implication that stood out, or something that you say, okay, now this is something that people might not be aware about? Like, what are the opportunities that mixed reality kind of like unlocks?
Yeah. I think of mixed reality as a new grammar. A question like, what does that mean? It means some of the assumptions that exist with virtual reality don't apply to mixed reality. Now, the thesis behind mixed reality is like it makes the headset and HMDs as a category more appealing to the outside sort of the innovator early adopter market that virtual reality has historically been focused on, and instead allow it to reach the normal person who might be considering to buy this device but feels very intimidated, so to speak, because you put the headset on, bam, you're in a virtual world, and you don't see the space in VR. Whatever is the app takes over the scene, and that's your space, and you could be on Mars. You don't see a body.
Even the lobby takes over. Let's talk about it. When you put down the Quest 3, you need to deliberately switch on the lobby. And that is huge, because it's a tiny icon that once you start, you totally neglect. So for you, the moment that you put this is mixed reality first. And that is pretty big. And that is pretty big in terms of user experience.
Yeah, you boot, you're spot on. Like, it's so easy to like, even in this conversation, we're just blowing past that like big insight, right? You boot into mixed reality. You see your world, you see your body. Big difference. Like in virtual reality, you don't see your body, and you don't see the real world. And any interaction between your body and the virtual world is entirely simulated, separate from reality. Whereas mixed reality, your space, the dimensions of your room, the furniture in your room, the clutter in your room are all a part of the experience. And you start seeing your body and you start interacting with it. This is why I think it's an entire, you actually called like about 10 minutes ago, you talked about like it's an exciting thing and it's also a reset. I actually will frame it as an inflection point. VR as a technology is the first wave of growth and will continue to grow at the rate at which like exciting content comes out and new devices come out in the market across the ecosystem. I think mixed reality is the next. You layer mixed reality on. It is its own thing, which will create new content classes, which we haven't thought about together, which will be the next growth wave. And that's why I call it grammar. What word will you? How will you string the words to write a sentence? How will you string the sentences to write together a paragraph? Paragraphs to chapters and chapters to books. None of it is known. And we can talk about very specific examples where mixed reality is so different from virtual reality, but
yeah. And I think you mentioned about your space being part of the world. I think that maybe for anybody that hasn't experienced or haven't seen it, I think we also have a little clip showing exactly that part of the process. You go in, the first thing you do is you get basically asked, hey, map your environment. So let's see it.
What's one of the first times you're likely to use color pass-through? It's when you do space setup to create a scene mesh. As you may have noticed, we've replaced the old manual room setup of the past with a new space setup process. Simply walk and look around the room, and Quest 3 will build up a representation of the environment around you. Applications can use this data, like they did with the old room setup data, to, say, put items on a table. But when you set up your room with space setup, this also creates a scene mesh. The Mesh API enables developers to create fast collisions for physics and navigation experiences in MR. It's a full 3D mesh of the world around you that multiple applications can use to provide more precise interactions with the world than have ever been possible before.
So this was in basically the how you actually can get those into your environment, into this virtual experience, or to interact with, to have the digital content interact with the physical world. And I think also one thing that is also very important is that right now, one thing is having a mesh where technically almost you cannot distinguish a wall between maybe a couch. You just have that mesh. But there is another thing that is actually very interesting, and that is the semantic labeling, right? And maybe to understand quickly, I also have this other section here that I would like to show. And in this case, you see how basically you get the headset to recognize the different elements, either books, people, and this is just an example. So this is not how it is working currently, but that semantic labeling, that's how it's called, allows to basically to segment the different objects that are visible in the scene and then identify them per function. Now, what this unlocks is actually the ability to have, if you're moving from one room or from a table to another table, so that content is always anchored to that surface in a way that is logical and that it makes sense, right? If you have a chair, it's going to always be linked to that chair. So these are some of the things that they were not explicitly said regarding. So we do have a mesh, we do have this interaction, we do have occlusion, but there is going to be a moment where you will be able to attach a function to label those objects, right? And Anand.
Yeah, no, the clip you showed was from, I think, the AR glasses section of one of the talks. If there are 3 words that this grammar has that's new, right? MR is a new grammar. It's scene mesh, occlusion, actually 4 words: scene mesh, occlusion, anchors, and depth. Just like repeat those 4 words: scene mesh, occlusion, anchors, and depth. Those are the building blocks that we have so far of this new grammar, right? And if you can understand the scene, occlusion is a fancy way of saying hiding. You can put virtual content in front of, behind, the real world content like your furniture and have it behave. Imagine things popping in and out. A lot of amazing games that like are on Quest 3 actually are starting to take like advantage of this. Depth is obviously like depth, and you can get dynamic interactions with depth. And anchors is what you were referring to, where you walk into your home office and you put the Quest 3 on, and things are labeled where they were.
Yeah,
And as
there is
a user,
a widget, a productivity widget is going to appear on your desk. If there is a frame with a portal, it's going to appear on a wall. If and so that's the kind of thing where there is meaning, and that's also the what they would mention, the augments, right? These kind of like little exist or persistent pieces of digital content that is going to exist in the space. So those are indeed some of the potential use cases.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, I think we can keep. Anand, there was like, let's see if maybe also other people have some remarks, right? I just want to remind everybody that we are here live. So if you do have questions or something you want to bring up, or something that we might have missed, or something that maybe you don't agree about, just dump a question. Happy to answer. But so. Anything else, Anand? Was there something that you say that maybe skipped the attention of the many? Because me, for example, from a more of a creator, right? So there were a couple of things that I was like, so one thing that was not highlighted, but then we saw some video afterward, was actually legs, and that is a bit of a spicy topic. Because who remembers this, right? I think that many might remember this initial image where we say, okay, there are going to be legs are coming. And I think legs have come, but they might not necessarily be as people might expect it. So let's maybe also show a little clip of that, because I think people might find it interesting. So in this case here, you see that what they call them are generative legs, right? So they can kind of like infer the position based on movement of the user. So I think this looks actually pretty convincing. One of the first things I was trying to do when I got them is like, hey, can I jump? Can I crouch? Can I kneel? And that was like pretty convincing. But these are and you see that they're kind of like working even in other, let's say, more extreme conditions, let's say, right? When you are gaming, when maybe you are playing a game. But the fact that these are still AI generated, right? So if they cannot guess a certain movement, that movement, it's not going to be seen, right? And so this is an important aspect, at least for people also understanding what are the capability and maybe not being, let's say, disappointed, right? Because, right, the first thing that people do once they get something, they try to break it, right? And I think it's normal, but that was one of the things that interesting, and I'm curious to see how that experience is going to feel like, because I haven't yet seen an application where there are those avatars multiple at the same time. Actually, I need to jump in Horizon World. Have you seen those legs in action with multiple people so far?
I have. And look, this is a process and a journey, and it's always about trade-offs, right? Could you get perfect? I mean, there used to be IK, right? IK was how you, by default, that's how you did it. But this is going beyond just IK. The next thing, you could add trackers and sensors. I mean, there's
right? Because that's the see, Sony is releasing trackers, but that's it. No, but I don't want trackers. Yeah, okay, man.
But the moment you add that, yes, you get high fidelity. Like, yes, I fold my legs and the headset will pick it up. But what is the trade-off? It's adoption and install base. Expecting the consumer to get a headset, a bunch of trackers, pair it with the Bluetooth, kills adoption and usage. And so at some point, like, you have to like find this trade-off. And I think AI generated legs are the trade-off that are worthwhile now. And I'm sure the inference models will get better and better to pick up movements. But yes, there are some constraints, but it's better than like what it was before. And this is like the core thing, right? Continuous exertion of force. Legs did not exist. Legs exist. they work 80% of the time. Try to get it 99.999% of the time because that's how the body's. There's a word called proprioception, which is the mind's ability to perceive where the body is, right? By the way, Gabriel, if you're in mixed reality, this doesn't matter because you can see your leg.
This is a very good point.
Right.
That's actually one of the first thing we did in Shapes when we enable let's say spatial anchors in Shapes. What we did is like get rid of the avatar. There were developers, but why do we want to get rid of the avatars? Why would you want to see someone's avatar when you're physically located in the same space? No, remove the avatar when you are in, like, let's say room mode and other people are not in when they are physically located.
I mean, it's interesting you pointed this out. Now you're talking about constructing a sentence using anchors, occlusion, depth, and scene mesh. In the statement that you just made, you're assuming Gabriele and Anand's in the same room. That's co-location in the same location,
right,
where you don't need the avatars. I can see your body. Like I can hand you something. But all co-location, but all co-presence is not co-location. This is co-presence. You and me across. You're sitting somewhere in Europe. I'm sitting somewhere in the US. And with those 4 building blocks, Gabriele, we can build an experience today where you come into my living room and we're working something together. And then it's helpful to see your legs, even in mixed reality, because you're physically not there. And that is an example of constructing a sentence, which could be a poem versus something that's a book, right? So co-location and co-presence have 2 different things.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. You know, sometimes like maybe kind of like jump into conclusion or to assumption, but yeah, now it is so important to kind of like when you talk. Yeah, we went to an event. Okay, first of all, was it a virtual event or was it a real world event? Was it a physical? And so this is like sometimes, you know, setting the words and agreeing on jargon is the first thing you need to do to get the conversation moving forward, because otherwise everybody starts going in his own line. Yeah. So yeah, and one thing actually I found that I mean, for anybody that is interesting, there is also like a hackathon, because again, from a waste creator perspective, there's WebXR hackathon organized between Meta and Amazon. So if you are interested, it's going to be in Seattle this November, so there is still some time. You can follow the @Oculus_dev. So that was actually interesting and was really hidden in the WebXR section. So I think something that people might be interested if they are in the area. And let me think. There was one thing that was missing. I felt almost, and that was Quest Pro. Like, I mean, I was honestly a little kind of like disappointed because, man, these are incredible. These have a power that people cannot imagine. I mean, when you can put a stylus under, you can put a tip under here, where this thing, people don't know that this is pressure sensitive. There is a demo that the guys at Oisoi Studio made that takes advantage of this capability, where you can actually exert force by pushing on the trigger and this flat surface that people see here. It was not talked enough, or it felt a bit like half failure. Like, we put so much technology, this is amazing, and it has better haptics. Like, man, this is... So that was a bit missing. Like, I felt that there was a missed opportunity, and maybe from developers even, because we at Shapes, for example, have put the effort to go into and implement the stylus as one, let's say, as a way to comment on just boop, you flip it, you write what you have to write, and then you have a 3D piece of content that basically you can put in places. But then again, I think that it's probably going back to some of the things you were mentioning about install base, right? That is the very, very tough bottleneck that people are facing. So yeah, I felt that there was a bit of that was a bit missing.
I think that's fair. as fair observation, and I worked on the Quest Pro for a long time, so it's near and dear to my heart. It's lying right there. But the number one thing is the number one thing.
And by the way, sorry, there was Dorian who actually agreed they were more precise and responsive than the Quest 2 controller. And you can put them down here and they will still track.
The self-track.
Yes, exactly, because they have two cameras on it, right? So, but indeed, Dorian, I agree with you. So sorry, Anand, for interrupting.
No, I'm glad that Dorian brought that up. Thank you for loving the Quest Pro touch controllers. They're self-tracked, and so that you can do amazing stuff with them, including like not just productivity use cases, right? Like sports, swinging a golf club, a baseball bat, like it's just self-tracked. That's why it's called a Pro. If you're using it for something that will give you incredibly more economic value, you should spend that money and get the Pro controller, and it actually works with Quest 3. But if you're a mass market consumer playing games, entertaining, like working out, like I think the Quest 3 controllers, and I don't know if you have that clip or not, but maybe we can put it in show notes later on. There was this simulation scene that showed the volume covered by the Quest 3 controllers.
Yeah,
and I think, net, it's like the horizontal view of how much the headset can see is actually much greater than the preceding devices. And I think the number one job is, like, I'm just going back to the basics. You have to increase install base. How? Get it to as many millions and billions of people as possible. And how do you do that? Highly performant, great, but you also have to like make the device affordable. Right? And then that comes with some of these trade-offs, because the moment you increase install base, the ecosystem increases, right?
Yeah. We got a question actually, or was like very big one. What can we expect in the next decade of VR development, like senses integration? And I think senses could be maybe other way in which we could gather input, maybe haptics, smells. I mean, that's how I interpret the question. I hope I'm interpreting right. Yes, I mean, I've seen that, for example, there are some company, again, that are developing some very, very specific application. Like, I don't know, Anand, if you know OVR, that stands for olfactory VR. They have basically like a cassettes that you put under the headset and basically releases smell based on certain experiences. And this is something, for example, done for rehabilitation, post-stress traumatic disorder, right, PTSD, where you maybe want to imitate the smell of burnt or maybe like wet, like the in these kind of situations. And when I tried actually at AWE, I was impressed that it was actually also depending on the distance of a certain object. So for example, if you have a rose and you put it far away, it's actually you smell very, very faint. If you put it closer, the smell increases. Also, it was really incredible, like how fast it changed. So there was, on one side there was a rose, on the other side there was dirt. So you could do rose, dirt, and the smell would change so fast. So I think that, again, I think for some application, we will see some of this, let's say, peripherals that are going to enhance the way we are talking about haptics for gloves, being a sense of touch. There is a company in Italy that called WeArt. They have actually sensors that they put on the tip of their finger to simulate cold or maybe roughness of surfaces. So it is going to be something that it's going to enhance, but it's going to have very specific, I think, use cases, being haptics and smell as this one. Anand, do you want to add anything on top of that?
No, I directly answered Kunal's question. I think it's a ways off. You will see innovation which will address like power user use cases. Wouldn't it be great to have that OVR when you're watching a movie? Great. But like for that, you need to first like believe and spend money as a consumer on the headset and then buy this. So I think you'll actually see some of this innovation, but I think it's a little bit ways off. And I think in the next 3 to 5 years, it'll be about getting the body right before getting the signal processing of the body better. So I think next 5 years is like foundational basic stuff till the body can be fully integrated. And so you can do away with a pointer device, do away with a keyboard, before going after like other senses, right? But haptic quests are available today for gaming. That's amazing. I'm told it's like incredible. I tried one. like 2 years ago, it was like super, super impressive.
Yeah, and I think it's getting the body right, but also find a meaningful way to integrate the real world in it, because that's the next playing field, right? And that is because also very often we just think about the digital content, but what about the real world? How will that interact? Because we are talking also about, for example, other experiences that go beyond. Maybe it's a smart light. Maybe it is your blinds. Maybe it is the world, and it's other people around you. That's why, for example, I'm so curious about what the Vision Pro is doing with their kind of like see-through. It's not see-through, but the fact that people that are outside can make eye contact with you that are inside. And that is something that is really going to change the way the real world and people in the real world will be able to interact with you. And I think it makes sense that right now, from the Quest 3, people that are inside are able to see outside. That's a great step forward. People around them will start realizing, oh, now I know they can see me. So this is different dynamic, right? And what the Vision Pro it's doing is instead bringing that even further, being able for people outside to see inside. And that is the many different ways in which the real world, those two worlds will collide, right? Will start interacting.
Yeah, I mean, this is why, like, I think this, back to my grammar analogy, right? Subject, object, verb. That's really the four words: depth, occlusion, scene mesh, and anchors. That's one axis. And then on the other axis, there's really three big things, right? One, how will you use the space and the objects within the space, including humans who are in this, other people in the space, and include that into whatever experience as a founder or developer that you're building. That's like one. The other is, how would you use the body in relation to the space, right? Like you talked about, like eyes being visible in front. That's one way to do it, right? And to me, like the third thing is the mechanics within the space, because remember, in virtual reality, you can locomote. You can go from the lake to the mountaintop.
Right.
In mixed reality, it's your room, right?
Yeah,
There's no locomotion.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you put the subject, verb, object, those four technical things on one axis, and there'll be many more that come, and you put these three things, so the space, the body, and the interaction between the two, you get this vibrant rich of 12 combinations at least, which is only going to grow as more reality perception increases and improves. That is really the canvas that founders and developers have to build the next set of experiences. And this is why I think like we're just at the starting point of the next wave. Back to your original question, what's going to be the future? These are the kind of things within all of this news that are like building blocks for people to build incredible things.
Here I'm sorry, but I need to say that because it's just like, and honestly, what kind of tool are people gonna be using to do that? Like when it's about creating, ideating, bringing people together, having the environment interact, are we still gonna do it on a screen? Really? Are we still gonna do it on a screen? I'm sorry, it's just that I cannot believe that. So that is why, I mean, I think if you are here and if you want to start creating without the fear of spending hours, thousands of dollars, time wasted, start and go in Shapes XR and start building stuff there. It's gonna be rough, quick, and you're gonna save just such an incredible amount of time. You're gonna come up with so much better idea. This is, I mean, I really believe it. So I think that for anybody that is trying to kind of like ideate and think about this future, I think it's important to start from designing spatially for these spatial experiences, because we are moving away from the flat screen, and that's going to happen at an even faster pace now. So that's, I think, one important thing that I want to give away. But I think we are closing in, Anand. I mean, we do have a few minutes left. So if you would say, to kind of like start wrapping up, right, what is that people should take away from this Meta Connect beyond the keynote from Mark?
Yeah. You touched on something which we didn't really talk about. If you actually like noticed, in peppered through the sessions were a lot of stuff about screens and 2D screens, right? There was conversations about like that Xbox cloud gaming is coming, and there was stuff around Horizon like World. So like I think,
Yeah.
what was that?
Horizon World coming to mobile and to screens.
Number one job, increase the install base. How do you do that? Make affordable devices. We've talked a lot about it. Affordable, great quality devices. There's also the other piece, which is like people outside VR and MR need to participate in experiences in VR and MR because there's billions of people who don't have a headset. And currently, the two worlds are separate. And so, like, I think screens in the short term are an ability for them to find their way back in. So, like, we didn't talk a lot about it. So I think, like, for me, like the three big things that were tucked away were one, like mixed reality is a new grammar. We've talked a lot about this. It's going to be the next sort of like paradigm of how people build. Two, I think the fact that mixed reality world is getting built on top of a $2 billion flywheel means that it's economic opportunity for the developers. And to me, then the third thing, which we've talked a lot about, is increasing the install base. I think the devices and the manufacturers of devices will do their bit to do that. I think the founders and the ecosystem that are in 2D, as I call it, flat screens, creating bridges in to VR MR is where I think a lot of that expansion will also come from. Those would be my three bits, which were in the other sections outside the keynote.
Yeah, I think that if we look at, so it feels a bit like when we said it is a reset and a brand new opportunity. It's kind of like Wild West for this new for it's a Wild West again, right? It was Wild West for me. Reality is still as a whole all new, but this mixed reality offer these opportunities. And I mean, we have seen, just as an example, that laser dodging game. I remember that, again, it started super simply, and it's just a great idea and was featured all over Connect, in all shapes of form. And I think it's a great idea. Is that complicated to put together? Yes, but to a certain extent, right? So, I mean, it's not to diminish the effort. It's more like there are so many opportunities, and it's about trying to find the right one in order to leverage, in order to enter the space. The other one, and I think is the scene understanding. It is really gonna change. So the ability to tag semantically this is really unlocking many opportunities to have our digital content in meaningful ways attached to our space, right? And it's about a music player. Maybe you get a notification, someone pop up, a collaboration. Let's go together. So it starts populating there. It's not like now I'm playing a game or now I'm not, right? It is. There are going to be many different ways. And I think lastly, when we talk about now I missed that. Oh, I think now it skipped my mind. Yeah, that's the beauty of the live. It's gone. The third one is gone, but I think we got at least 5 guys that I hope you guys managed to digest. And Anand, do you want to add something else to this conversation? We are now wrapping up the second episode of Reality Shift. So this is the second. We're going to have another one coming up, probably end of the month, maybe beginning of next month. We're going to see, but stay tuned and follow us. Anand, would you like to add anything, any closing remarks?
More than closing remarks, like I think I just wanted to, we do this because both Gabriele and I intrinsically care deeply about developers and developer success. At the end of the day, innovation will happen only when developers innovate. That is the exertion of force. And so if you're a founder out there, developer out there, my belief as an eternal optimist is just like, there is a lot more that will come and will happen that'll make this the next computer. And if you're on the fence, you're not making a wrong bet. So get in there and play with things and build your point of view, because it's as much as we think where it's going, like it's really going to be about you pushing it. And so we're really grateful. I'm really grateful that we have this energy around the ecosystem, because I remember the dark days.
Yes. I think the prior Apple moments, that was like it's been tough. But again, we discuss about hype cycles. And we go there, watch the other episodes. I think it's gonna be ups and downs, like any technological advancement. We cannot expect to
No, maybe the next time what we should do is try and get contrarian views on the show. Like, hey, would you invest? Would you not invest? Like somebody else. So maybe we do that.
So for anybody listening now, if you're a contrarian, that is totally fine. Let's have a good conversation. Happy to have you on the show. Send us a message. We will be happy to broaden, get someone else here on the show, and get to see and expand and get more challenging. Right? That's also part of the things we love to do. So guys, thank you very much for everybody that was listening here live, who is going to listen later on Spotify, the podcast, or on YouTube. So thanks, everybody. Follow us, and let's go through this reality shift together. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.